Breaking news, terror plot thwarted. The new details that led to the sudden cancellation of 3 Taylor Swift concerts in Vienna, Austria. The disruption to the European leg of the Eras tour, sure to disappoint tens of thousands of fans, including Americans hoping to see her. The arrests and chemical substances found at a 19-year-old suspect's home. The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in for Nora. We start tonight with breaking news from Vienna, Austria, where several upcoming Taylor Swift concerts were just canceled after the arrest of 2 suspected terrorists who were plotting a possible attack focused on one of her sold-out shows. Authorities say one of the men has sworn an oath to ISIS. Police are pursuing additional suspects. The Austrian chancellor said that while the cancellations are a bitter disappointment to Swift's fans, the situation was very serious and, quote, a tragedy prevented. The Eras Tour is already the highest-grossing concert tour in music history, raking in more than $1 billion. We have details on this developing story from CBS's Chris Livesay.
It's one of the biggest tours in history. Tonight, made even more memorable for the wrong reasons. A terrorist plot thwarted by police to attack Taylor Swift's concerts later this week in Austria. Police say 2 suspects who radicalized themselves on the internet are now in custody. One of them swore allegiance to ISIS, then carried out concrete preparatory acts for a terrorist attack. The bomb squad was called after police say they found the suspects in possession of chemical substances. A catastrophe averted, but all 3 concerts have been canceled as a precaution. Ruling out a repeat of the 2017 attack in Manchester, England, when a suicide bomber killed 22 people during an Ariana Grande concert. Tonight in Austria, that's an estimated 65,000 fans per day and another 15 to 20,000 who were expected to gather outside the stadium, now forced to stay home from a tour that's been called a cultural phenomenon. And tonight, CBS News has learned the information about the 2 suspects in Austria originated from U.S. intelligence and was communicated to Austrian authorities. Chris Livesay, CBS News, Venice.
At the White House today, President Biden sat down with CBS's Robert Costa for his first interview since dropping out of the 2024 race. Listen to what the president said could happen 5 months from now.
Are you confident that there will be a peaceful transfer of power in January 2025?
If Trump wins, no, I'm not confident at all. I mean, if Trump loses, I'm not confident at all. He means what he says. We don't take him seriously. He means it. All the stuff about if we lose, there'll be a bloodbath. It's have to be a stolen election. Look what they're trying to do now in the local election districts where people count the votes. They're putting people in place in states that they're going to count the votes, right? You can't love your country only when you win.
Robert Costa joins us now. Robert, a dramatic moment.
It was a dramatic statement to have the sitting president of the United States just a little over 5 months away from the transfer of power say he's not confident there will be a peaceful transfer if the Republican nominee, former President Trump, does not win the election. It's a stark message from the president, and it underscored his alarm in our conversation for CBS Sunday Morning, airing this Sunday, about the state of American democracy. He believes it's so fragile. He also talked about his decision, not just on a political level, but a personal level, talking about his family and about how they really influenced his decision as well.
Very good work. Robert Costa, thank you so much. You can see more of Robert's interview with President Biden this weekend on CBS Sunday Morning. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris and her new running mate, Tim Walz, held a rally in battleground Wisconsin today, at the same time in the same city as Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance. This split-screen moment comes as we're learning tonight that a 2020 phone call from Donald Trump may undercut his own campaign's attack line against Walz. Here's CBS's Nancy Cordes.
It's the first full day of their partnership, and the second day that the lines to see Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz stretched out of sight.
You had to walk 2 miles. I had nothing to do with that, by the way, nothing.
It happened here in Detroit and in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Population 70,000.
Donald Trump is not for you or your family. And Trump's running mate shares those same dangerous, and backward beliefs.
It is here in the Midwest where the campaign is hoping Walz will do the most to attract new voters.
We could relate to him. He was real. And we need that. We need someone that is real.
The Republican VP nominee, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, has been counter-programming, holding events nearby. Today, he even walked from his plane over to Vice President Harris's plane on the tarmac in Wisconsin.
I just wanted to check out my future plane, but I also wanted to go say hello to the Vice President and ask her why Kamala Harris why does she refuse to answer questions from the media?
Vance and Trump have been going after Governor Walz for his handling of the unrest in Minneapolis after George Floyd was killed by police in 2020.
I think Governor Walz has to answer when it comes to his record. This is a guy who says that he stands for public safety, but actively encouraged the rioters who burned down Minneapolis.
But at the time, Trump was full of praise for Walz, according to this audio recording of a phone call with governors.
Tim is on the phone now. Tim Walz. Again, I was very happy with the last couple of days, Tim. You called up big numbers, and the big numbers knocked them out so fast it was like bowling pins.
The Vance campaign has also been going after Walz all day for retiring from the Army National Guard a few months before his battalion ended up being called up to Iraq. On stage today, Walz said he proudly wore the uniform for 24 years and retired in order to run for Congress. Major?
Competing with the campaign noise in Detroit and doing so admirably. Nancy Cordes, thank you. Now to the widespread damage from Tropical Storm Debbie. Parts of the southeast could see another 8 to 10 inches of rain, along with a second landfall overnight. Strong winds and pounding rain are battering the Carolina coast, while farther inland, officials built protective sand barriers. Powerful storms, meanwhile, partially fueled by Debbie, caused problems in the northeast last night, knocking down trees and flooding roads. Eric Fisher, chief meteorologist from CBS Boston, is tracking where Debbie is heading next. Eric, good evening.
Good evening, Major. This has been a slow-moving, meandering storm across the south over the past few days, producing prodigious amounts of rainfall. We still have a ways to go, still slow movement tonight. Here's a look at the latest track and what we'll be watching. We will see that second landfall late tonight as it comes back ashore in South Carolina. Now, once it comes ashore, it starts to lose some of those tropical characteristics. However, it still brings all that tropical rainfall and all that moisture. Rain is the story. It will start to accelerate, though. It moves much faster to the north as it comes through interior sections of the northeast and then exits on Saturday morning, coming through northern New England. Biggest flood risk at this point as it heads north. We're talking interior sections of Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York State, and Vermont, which has already had a couple rounds of intense flooding this summer. It's already primed for flash flooding. We'll be watching late Friday and into Saturday morning for some of that heaviest rainfall. So still a lot of water yet to fall here, several inches of rain. Tropical downpours, it's their nature to come down in a hurry. So avoid the high water when possible. We still have a ways to go. We'll get through it. Stay safe over these next couple of days as we watch Debbie's path. Major?
With all the details, Eric Fisher, thanks so much.
This surveillance video shows a frantic Devontae Mitchell running through the lobby of the Hyatt Regency Hotel in downtown Milwaukee before shutting himself in a women's bathroom. The criminal complaint says an off-duty security guard then pulled him out, while a guest helped drag him toward the exit door. At one point, an employee strikes Mitchell with a broom, then another begins punching him repeatedly. Outside, employees held Mitchell on his stomach for 8 to 9 minutes, according to court documents. He can be heard repeatedly shouting for help.
Please stop fighting! Please stay down!
Defendant Herbert Williamson, a hotel bellman who told authorities he put his knee on Mitchell's back, told CBS News he was only following management's orders and is innocent. The complaint says Williamson, along with front desk worker Devin Johnson Carson and security guards Todd Erickson and Brandon Turner, are facing felony murder charges. The 4 men could serve more than 15 years in prison if convicted.
It's a small victory, for us, for the family.
Mitchell's sister Naisha believes the 43-year-old was suffering from mental health issues. A medical examiner's report determined Mitchell's cause of death was restraint asphyxia and toxic effects of cocaine and methamphetamine.
I also just wish that a good handful of them would have intervened, and helped my brother. I really wish that the community could have came together and realized that they were killing him. He was being murdered and he needed help.
Hyatt said in a statement today it supports Mitchell's family in their pursuit of justice. And Ambridge Hospitality, the company operating this franchised hotel, said last month it fired several employees involved. Major?
Sana Saberi, thank you. For the first time, we're hearing accounts from the flight crew about what happened when the door panel blew off that Alaska Airlines plane mid-flight in January. CBS's Chris Van Cleve reports the manufacturer of that aircraft is making no promises it couldn't happen again.
When the door panel blew out of Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 in January, the pilots heard a loud bang. Their ears popped. The cockpit door flew open and ripped off the co-pilot's headset. The captain called the rapid depressurization an explosive experience. The first officer called it chaos as the pilots struggled to communicate. They didn't know their brand new 737 MAX was now flying with a gaping hole. Inside the passenger cabin, when the flight attendant in the back first saw the damage, they told investigators, "I was absolutely certain we had lost people out of the hole and that we had casualties." One flight attendant recalled wondering, "Pilots, where are you? No idea if they are alive, conscious. Did they know there's a hole in the plane?" As they approached the runway, the pilots reported their oxygen masks fogging up. Still, the plane landed safely.
This was quite traumatic for the crew and the passengers.
NTSB Chair Jennifer Hamady is leading this week's investigative hearing into the accident.
How did that door panel leave Boeing without the bolts that hold it in place?
That is part of our question. We knew it was open. At this point, we knew it was closed. What happened on the in-between? We don't know. And neither do they. That's a problem.
And when asked, Boeing could not rule out a mistake like this happening again.
Are you 100%? Can you tell Alaska Airlines there may never be a situation where bolts won't be put into a door plug?
I can't make a promise or a guarantee like that.
That same Boeing official stressed the company is committed to making the needed changes, and we've learned they are redesigning that door panel in an effort to avoid a repeat of January. That change could be ready within the year, Major.
A harrowing test for that flight crew. Chris Van Cleve, thank you very much. The crew of Boeing's Starliner space capsule stranded at the International Space Station may have to hitch a ride home from a rival company next year. Details next. NASA says there's internal disagreement over how to bring home 2 astronauts from the International Space Station. The question, is Boeing's Starliner spacecraft up to the job? As CBS's Mark Strassman reports, NASA may have to use Boeing's competitor SpaceX to bring the astronauts home next February.
Astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams were supposed to spend 8 days in space. NASA now says they could spend 8 months.
Our chances of an uncrewed Starliner return have increased a little bit based on where things have gone over the last week or two.
Starliner has 2 unresolved issues: helium leaks and worries about small maneuvering engines that failed on the flight to the International Space Station. NASA's key concern, how that propulsion system will perform during critical phases of flight like undocking and the braking burn on the return to Earth. The small engines need to fire hundreds of times to keep the spacecraft in the precise orientation. Boeing is confident, but within NASA there's disagreement.
They're worried that we don't know for sure, so they estimate the risk higher, and they would recommend that we avoid coming home because we have another option.
That option? The next SpaceX mission to the ISS could launch with a crew of 2 instead of 4, leaving 2 empty seats for Wilmore and Williams to return next February. We asked NASA astronaut Nick Hague about the possibility of giving up his seat.
Ultimately, those are my colleagues up there, and there's nothing I want to see more than for them to come home safely.
Even if it means that your next trip to space gets delayed?
Absolutely.
NASA could make a decision critical to Starliner's future by late next week. Mark Strassman, CBS News, Atlanta.
Eye on America is next with a look at employees who work under brutally hot conditions. As we've been reporting, Tropical Storm Debbie continues to pound the East Coast, but 63 million Americans are also coping with excessive heat, enduring temperatures that feel as hot as 110. Think about what that means for people trying to do their jobs. In tonight's Eye on America, David Schechter shows us the proposed protections for workers who can't stand the heat and can't get out of the kitchen.
Sometimes it's a little hectic.
Spend a day with Chef Edwin Sandoval in Denver, and you can't help asking yourself, does this guy ever stop?
I love it, to be honest with you. This is so much different than being in a traditional brick and mortar restaurant.
Chef Edwin has 2 events ahead of him, a 16-hour day, and it's gonna be hot. Are you feeling good about today? Everything ready to go?
I feel fantastic. There's always like that, a little bit of an aspect of kind of being like foggy, because I think it's like so hot and your body's trying to adjust the temperature.
Mandy! On board, it's 102 degrees and even hotter in front of the grill. He let me feel the heat for myself.
Go ahead and take the spatula and we're just gonna turn around the chicken.
It is hot in this kitchen.
Yeah.
Have you ever just felt like this is overwhelming?
You know, I think consistently, and I think there's just like to a point where you realize that there's a discomfort in working in kitchens.
Chef Edwin regularly rotates his workers off the grill and carries plenty of water and Gatorade on board. And while 5 states have laws in place protecting workers from excessive heat, for decades there have been no federal protections.
But that might be changing. This summer, the Biden administration proposed new rules that would protect 36 million workers. At 80 degrees, there'd be access to drinking water and rest areas, and at 90 degrees, mandatory 15-minute work breaks every 2 hours.
The proposed safety standards would cover most private sector jobs like restaurant, construction, warehouse, and delivery. Some big trade groups like the American Farm Bureau Federation oppose the new rules. In a statement, it writes, "This rule is another one-size-fits-all regulation that fails to account for diverse regional differences."
I think they absolutely will make an impact on the lives of workers.
Jill Rosenthal is an advocate for worker health and safety. She says the proposal can be good for both workers and employers.
It can reduce worker compensation claims, reduce healthcare costs. If you consider the productivity losses that employers are facing, it shouldn't be much of a lift.
How can we keep staff the happiest and healthiest and the safest while working for me? But then also I have to sit there with the same logic and say, how can I make this financially responsible on my end?
Across the country, 7 out of 10 communities now experience at least 7 more extremely hot days each year than they did in 1970. In Denver, for example, it's 27 days. In Seattle, it's 14 days. And in Detroit, it's 10. The increases are driven by the way we emit heat-trapping gases that cause climate change.
Yeah, what a day, guys. What a day. You're dealing with this extreme heat throughout the day. I guess
Makes
tough.
for a long day, huh?
Yeah. I can feel it in my joints.
Working in the heat takes its toll. And tomorrow, he'll do it all over again. For Eye on America, I'm David Schechter in Denver.
An Olympic update is next with Americans running and artistically swimming to the podium.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by ILEA HD.
Finally tonight, Team USA is sprinting and swimming its way to more medals at the Paris Olympics. Quincy Hall staged an epic, and I mean epic, comeback to capture gold in the men's 400 meters. And the U.S. artistic swim team is taking home the silver medal, their first medal in the sport in 20 years. The team went viral earlier this week with a Michael Jackson-themed routine, including the moonwalk, which they performed upside down. Amazing. And that is tonight's CBS Evening News. For Nora O'Donnell, I'm Major Garrett. Good night.